Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down the tragic and incredibly short final flight of Air India 171. This was a flight that was over almost as soon as it began, and it left behind a trail of evidence that points directly to a catastrophic technical failure.
So just try to picture this. On June 12, 2025, an Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner takes off from Ahmedabad. It's headed for London. But just 11 seconds after lifting off, it hits its maximum altitude of only 625 feet, and it can't climb any higher. 23 seconds after that, it crashes. The entire flight lasted just 34 seconds.
In the middle of this chaos, the pilots made one final, desperate call to air traffic control. And these four words, thrust not achieved, falling, well, they are our first and maybe our most direct clue to figuring out what went so terribly wrong. For some reason, the engines just weren't producing power.
To really understand what happened in the air, investigators had to start on the ground, piecing together the evidence from what people could see and hear.
The first clues actually came from two totally accidental recordings. One was from a 17-year-old who just happened to be filming the takeoff, and the other was from a standard airport security camera. Now, the CCTV footage was useful for the timeline, but it was the bystanders' higher quality video that revealed some really critical anomalies.
Okay, so when investigators looked at the video, two things just jumped right out as being completely wrong. On the left here, you see a normal takeoff. The landing gear comes up to reduce drag, and the wing flaps are out to generate lift. But on the right, you see Flight 171. It was in the exact opposite configuration. Its gear was still down, and its flaps were retracted, which makes it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to climb.
But it wasn't just the gear and the flaps. The investigation really started to zero in on another bizarre detail from that bystander's video. A small object, seen deploying from underneath the plane, actually became the key to unlocking this entire mystery.
So this image, it sparked immediate debate among aviation experts. What is this thing, and why on earth would it deploy during the most critical phase of a flight? The answer pointed to a really dire emergency happening inside that cockpit.
Turns out, the object was the ram air turbine, or as it's known, the RAT. You can basically think of it as the plane's last-ditch effort to stay alive. It's a small propeller that drops down into the airstream to generate just enough emergency power for the most essential flight controls, when everything else has gone dark.
And here's the thing. The RAT isn't something a pilot chooses to deploy. It's an automatic last resort system. Its appearance means the plane has lost its main power sources. For a modern airliner, especially during takeoff, that is a genuine worst-case scenario. And this wasn't just a visual clue. The sole survivor of the crash actually reported hearing a loud bang, followed by flickering lights. Those are classic signs of the RAT's hatch blowing open and the electrical system desperately switching to emergency power. Audio analysis of the video also picked up this whirring, propeller-like sound, completely different from a jet engine.
So the deployment of the RAT, it isn't just a clue. It's a declaration. It's telling investigators in no uncertain terms that the plane was facing a total and catastrophic loss of power.
The RAT only comes out for a handful of really, really bad scenarios. So now, investigators had to figure out which one it was. But when you combine the RAT's deployment with the pilot's final call, thrust not achieved, the evidence starts to point overwhelmingly in one single direction.
A dual-engine failure. It's an event that is almost unheard of in modern aviation. We're talking only 7 confirmed cases in the last 70 years. Modern jets are designed to fly perfectly fine on just one engine. Losing both, especially right after takeoff, is almost always catastrophic.
So, if a dual-engine failure was the what, the next huge question for investigators was, of course, the why. And this led them down the path of 3 main theories.
Right now, the investigation is really focused on 3 primary possibilities that could have caused both of the Dreamliner's massive engines to just give up at the same time.
First up, contaminated fuel. What if the jet fuel got mixed with water, or debris, or even some kind of bacteria? It could have clogged the fuel lines, basically starving both engines of power right after takeoff. And this isn't just a theory. It actually happened to another 787 in Japan back in 2019.
Okay, theory number 2, a total electrical failure. You see, modern engines are controlled electronically. If the plane's main electrical system fails, the pilots lose control of the engines, even if they're mechanically perfect. And yeah, there's a backup system, but it can take up to 90 seconds to kick in, and that was time Flight 171 simply did not have.
The third possibility is that there was just a fundamental flaw in the hardware itself. This could be some kind of shared mechanical defect in both engines straight from the factory, or maybe a critical error made during maintenance that took out the entire power system.
But an investigation like this never happens in a vacuum. To really understand this one crash, you have to look at the history, not just of this specific plane, but of the entire 787 Dreamliner program.
This was not a pristine aircraft. Back in 2021, this exact same plane had to make an emergency landing because of a fuel leak. And even more chilling, on a flight just hours before the crash, a passenger recorded video showing that the air conditioning and the in-flight entertainment systems were completely dead, a huge potential sign of an underlying electrical problem.
And if you zoom out even further, you find that for years, Boeing insiders have been raising the alarm about the 787. We're talking about engineers and quality managers alleging that rushed production led to improperly assembled planes, faulty parts, and even dangerous debris just being left inside the aircraft.
I mean, listen to this. The late John Barnett, a quality manager at the 787 factory for over 30 years, he was so disturbed by what he saw that he said he warned his own family to never, ever fly on a Dreamliner.
And here is where this gets even more significant. It's the timing. Another quality manager, Cynthia Kitchens, specifically warned about 11 very poor quality planes delivered between 2012 and 2013, and 6 of them went to Air India. The plane that crashed, it was delivered in January 2014, immediately following that period of intense concern.
The black boxes have been recovered, so the official investigation will eventually determine the precise sequence of failures. But this crash leaves all of us with a much bigger question. When red flags are being raised for years, from inside the factory walls to the aircraft itself, who is ultimately accountable when the worst finally happens?